Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alexandra. And thank you too, Michael, for spending some time with us today. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and we're going to make this certainly interesting, insightful, and most of all, fun. I mean, that's what this is all about. We want to keep this sort of light, but we're going to deliver some information that we hope that you can begin to think about and take back to your organization and certainly be more effective at reducing risk from cybersecurity. So with that, I'm going to open this up. And Mike, as I said, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the last couple of weeks here. So nice to see you, and thanks for moderating. So a little bit about me. So I went to James Madison University for my undergrad, studied computer information systems, always had an interest in computer networking, security, just the internet, that concept, way back when I was in my undergrad, it was up and coming. So curiosity, I studied that. That led to a job with Booz Allen Hamilton outside of the Washington, D.C. area. So a contractor supporting federal military clients. Great experience there, working in like the FISMA field, certification accreditations, security tests and evaluations, and meeting with a bunch of clients. Like I said, federal clients, military clients, a lot of travel. So exciting time in my career. That led to an opportunity with Department of Homeland Security. So I got sick of billing charge numbers, for the contracting space. So it was nice. It was a good opportunity to move over to the federal side. So I started with Department of Homeland Security, called the National Cybersecurity Division at the time. It's been since renamed CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, where I was tasked to create assessments that were used by critical infrastructure, state and local governments, and then execute those assessments. So really drive down risk through assessments, through conversations and discussions around best practices. I was promoted as a cybersecurity advisor, so moved up to the Boston, Massachusetts area, where I would meet with owners and operators of critical infrastructure, all the different sectors, the small, medium, large businesses, anywhere in between there, as well as state and local governments, and be an advisor. So truly be an advocate, be a resource they can call, offer best practices and all the resources out of the federal government. So it was exciting role there. And then that was parlayed into where I'm at now at US Bank. I'm a business information security officer, a BISO. The concept of a BISO back in 2016 was new, not so new within financial services. That concept was slowly being introduced, but more and more the concept of a BISO has become more mainstream within a lot of other sectors. The role of a BISO is to really empower the business line that we are aligned to and that we support. So bring things like policy and policy interpretations, controls, designs, effectiveness, assessments and briefings, bring all of that information, that security knowledge to the business line to empower them, like I said. And then vice versa, take information back. So information about the business objectives, the strategies, the heartburn that they're experiencing, take that back into security and help shape to the design of our initiatives and the rollout of our initiatives from a security standpoint. So that's a little bit about me and my career here. But Robert, I guess question back to you. Tell me a little bit about you.
I'm going to jump into that in just a second. What you just described is essentially a deputy CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, in a business unit, because you understand the language, you understand the processes, you understand people and what happens from cyber, but then you also are tightly aligned with the business function. So that's really a CISO's role, right? I mean, they're looking at it globally, but I can see where things are so complex that having their, person that's day-to-day dedicated, intimately associated with the business is very important. I mean, a CISO just have that much more to do. So you asked me about my career. Well, my career began, first of all, undergraduate degree in electrical engineering from the University of Notre Dame. Went from University of Notre Dame with a GEM fellowship to what was then a Polytechnic University in Brooklyn. I was sponsored by Brookhaven National Laboratory out on Long Island. It could have been sponsored by a variety of companies, but Brookhaven is the company that says, hey man, we're sponsoring you. And then I chose the school that I wanted to attend, and that was which is now today NYU Tandon. Studied, did very well electrophysics, but I moved into the study of communications at the time. And when I was in graduate school, it was pretty, technology was pretty nascent. You had phone switches and you weren't doing a lot of data communication. I mean, when you did, it was very low speed. I mean, you're talking 2.4 bits per second. 2.4 bits per second, right over a telephone line. That was moving. But I was doing electronics and high power electronics with a superconducting supercollider. And many people think of the Higgs boson, the particle. Well, Brookhaven was building magnets to go in superconducting supercolliders to understand what matter is made of. Well, I discovered I didn't want to just continue to pursue that path. And so I found myself, my first corporate career opportunity was with Merck and Company in the pharma industry. And one of the things that I had the pleasure of dealing with was video conferencing. And that video conferencing, I think I had shared this with you, Mike, but I'll share it with the group. Video conferencing back in early 90s, where investments for rooms, a pair of rooms, was in excess of $1 million, including demolition. And the communication link at 1.5 megabits per second was several $1,000s per month. And today we're using Zoom, and most people are probably on a laptop and they're using their own in-home Wi-Fi or wherever they are. And so we've come that far, and I really appreciate the fact that I had the chance to see the growth and progression of that. Well, I didn't stay dealing with what we call telecommunications technologies for long. I moved into the role of data communications manager globally for Merck. And we were stretching a network using some modern technology at the time, but you'd say, wait a minute, you were using that. It was X25. That was what you had from an international perspective. We had to connect our research labs and other locations to our corporate computing resource area. And our killer app, which is the same killer app today, was electronic mail. And so we ushered in electronic mail. We ushered in local area networks, wide area networks. And I was recruited away. I was recruited away to a company where they make chocolate candies, and they have little fellas like this, and that's Mars. And so that's Snickers, Three Musketeers. It's a confectionery division, a pet food division, a main meal division, my Uncle Ben's, and even coin recognition devices. Mars Electronics. They were known for being able to take a bill in any orientation, and only a portion of the bill. They'll never tell you how much of that portion it was, but they could recognize a portion of a bill and allow for vending machines to operate. Well, there I was responsible for voice, data, and video at a larger scale. It was just data at Merck, but at Mars it was voice, data, and video for an entire region, right, from Canada all the way through Latin America. And what I call the premier project that I got my hands on was leading the transition from a time division multiplex network to a fast packet switch network. It was AT&T's interspan frame relay. What was unique at Mars was that I connected the company, or we connected the company, to the internet in the 1995 timeframe. And we were using a firewall, a bastion host for trusted information systems, and Marcus Raynham. If you guys want to understand some computer history, look up Marcus Raynham. But it's trusted information systems. That was the first time that I was involved with a company that was connected to the internet. Well, stayed there for a while, transition that network, and we moved that network right about in this August timeframe. Here we are in October, closing in October, And if you were moving and disrupting a network at that time, that the network that was responsible for materials management, so that was making product and then logistics, getting product to supply chains like Target and Walmart and others. If we had disrupted that network, man, I mean, the family would have been really disappointed in me. They weren't disappointed in me. We succeeded. I was recruited away from Mars to the IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, and I spent about a decade there. And they recruited me to help them do business electronically. And doing business electronically largely was converting the paper-based membership renewal application to an electronic web-based. And the key, the most important thing was transitioning a digital library to make that available online. In the 2000 timeframe, we were doing about $200 million worth of e-commerce revenue over the web in 2001. We were the number 11 pay site, according to a Newsweek magazine article, and that's it. Now, you can imagine we had sophisticated identity and access management in front of that digital library because governments, large corporations, small corporations, universities, you name it, they were getting at the IEEE content to promote and stimulate innovation. And so that's sort of how I did that. And now I'm here, the company over my shoulder, there's Pre-Safe Technologies, and I'm looking to do that same sort of cybersecurity approach for small, medium-sized businesses and large businesses in the marketplace who, like you, Mike, don't understand cybersecurity, and they need somebody that does. So that brings you from the beginning to sort of now, and I just so happen to be the president of the Alumni Association and a board member and that kind of thing at Tandon, and a board member at NYU Alumni Association as well. So that covers both of our experiences. So Mike, I think there was something you wanted to ask me. There's something else I think you wanted to ask me. Did it relate to aviation?
Yeah, I know that it's kind of a niche area for you. You know, aviation security for folks who are interested. You know, it's certainly well, vital. I mean, we've all been on an airplane, but tell us aviation security. What is it you do? You know, how
okay, that's you know, I knew we had talked about that, and I probably forgot about it. That's the truth of it. But aviation is about 16 million flights a year. About 44 billion pounds of freight moves by aviation a year. Pre-COVID, that 16 million number of flights per year, this is globally, was actually at 40. That was at 40 million. So you can see that it dipped down quite a bit. It'll go back to those levels. There are about 19,000 airports in the United States, about 900,000 drones, about 500,000 of those are recreational. Aviation cybersecurity. So for those that are listening, there was a breach with Uber just a few days ago. It didn't affect the way that the cars were routed. But let's say that with aviation, you are now going to have a change to the national airspace. You're going to have lots of drones in the sky, right? Recreational and otherwise. You already have 1 million registered. And by the way, the 1 million registered doesn't actually mean 1 million because you might have several drones under that registration. All right, so you have drones. You have uncrewed aircraft in the national airspace. You now also are going to have advanced urban air mobility, which is Uber-like air taxi service. That's going into the airspace. You're now seeing commercial space flight. You have 3 vendors out there, SpaceX, you've got Blue Origin, you've got Virgin Galactic. That's going up. And by the way, Blue Origin just had a challenge just the other day. They had to separate the crew capsule from the rockets, and the rockets were destroyed. Okay, crew capsule landed. Then you have supersonic, right? And what you understand as normal air flight, aircraft flight. All of that is going into a national airspace that was designed for piloted aircraft. So air traffic management is crucial. And with that, you have systems, both weather systems that give input, you have radar and trafficking or radar and tracking. You have a variety of infrastructure, a lot of it's technology based that operates or that delivers the functionality for air traffic management. So what if we have a disruption there. What if we can't actually know where aircraft are? What if, because we're getting bad data, aircraft are actually real close to one another when they shouldn't be? And that is what we have to protect, because this national airspace is changing. And as I said, what we need in the aviation industry are bright minds, curious minds like what you described, Mike, to help us deal with this challenge. It's a daunting one. You have these large companies like Amazon and Walmart and the carriers, the FedExes and UPSs. They're trying to get in because the last mile of this new version of how we shop is all about speeding up the supply chain. And so what we have to do is imagine a van that now goes to an area and it has packages in it and it deploys a fleet of drones to do the last mile delivery. How much more efficient is that than these vans coming to each and every home? I mean, I see these vans coming and they literally have to go to each and every home. All of that information that's necessary to provide a safe airspace has to be protected. And I'll leave you with this one. Wired magazine, Garmin. There was a breach with Garmin a few years, about a year and a half ago. People think that affected fitness tracking devices. Find that article. You're going to see that small aircraft pilots weren't able to file flight plans because they couldn't download data. That's where we are. That is where we are. This is a huge opportunity. And by the way, when you're in an airplane, the goal is to get you to the ground safely. We can't just, have a queue up and, they'll just be inconvenienced. It's all about the safety. It's a safety critical environment. So that was a long answer, Mike, but I wanted to give it to you. And if questions arise about that, I'm happy to tell you, but a lot is going to be changing in the national airspace, and cybersecurity is crucial to ensuring that things function the way that they should.
Interesting area for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, Mike, I want to come to you now. Talk to me about some of the biggest threats you're seeing today.
How much time do we have? So, before we get into that, I want to make sure I mention, NYU Tandon. I know there may be some prospective students, even current students on now. For myself, I'm a recent graduate of cybersecurity program, master's in cybersecurity from Tandon Cyber Fellows. Fantastic opportunity for me. If you're in the program, I'm sure you would agree. I hit, 4 years ago, a point in my career where I was looking to continue with professional development. I wasn't interested in obtaining another certification. I already had CISSP, CISSP, project management. So I wanted a challenge. I wanted one that would benefit me personally, professionally. I looked into a whole host of programs and finally settled on NYU. Was applied. I guess I did apply. I was accepted for the first cohort. So if you're in the program now, chances are some of our feedback that we provided early on will help shape the program and what you're seeing today. It was a 3-year program for me. I opted to do one class per semester. Time commitment, it just made the most sense for me. I knew that I wanted a technical program. I wanted to enhance my technical chops. I wasn't interested in the policy oriented degree. And I think NYU checked a lot of boxes. What I will say is if you are interested in the program, you're leaning towards it, just make sure that you are committed. You're going to be dedicated. There is an immense challenge ahead, with time and the time commitments that impacts your personal life. So just make sure you are fully on board before you sign up. There's kind of no going back. You have to be all in or not in at all. Last thing I'll say is I met some of the most incredible people, folks that were like-minded. They wanted to enhance themselves, personally, professionally, academically. It just was a wonderful opportunity. But partnering with various team members, just was so gratifying for myself, and made wonderful friends as a result of it. So I got a lot out of it, and I hope that you do as well.
let me probe at that a little bit, Mike. You went to or completed this program during an upheaval in learning,
Mhm.
right? Typically, people are physically present. So talk to me about how effective the instruction and what you got out
Sure.
of the program, how effective that was in the format that you had.
It's a great question. I had been out of academia for quite some time, and so to jump back into it and then kind of full immersion just online. I was only interested in online programs. I didn't know what to expect from a resources and what the university would provide me
Mhm.
or us as students. But the technology that NYU invested in just the way that information is communicated. The teachers were always available, office hours, just again, the Zoom meetings and the various other technologies like Blackboard and others. They made it easy from a technology standpoint. Everything was self-contained in the portal, made it very easy to find. So you had limited time kind of navigating the challenges of where is the data, where's the information. There were enough challenges with the degree, and so they made it easy in that regard for the novice student.
Yeah, well, what I like about that is what you have now described is you're taking the physical presence limitation
Mhm.
from someone participating away. And you can be anywhere and participate in the program.
Got it.
And as you
Yep.
just said, the delivery of the instruction is so effective that you came away, realizing and feeling that you got great value out of
Oh
your
yeah.
experience. And I would imagine, would you say that about your colleagues, your cohorts?
100%. Yeah. And we were all in it together.
Great.
There were 100 strong, I think, in cohort one. I think there were some folks who ended up dropping out for whatever reason, but for the team members that I was associated with, absolutely, some fantastic friends, and we're all in it together. So it was great to get through it.
Very good. Very good. Well, we missed that piece, and I apologize for that.
No,
Um,
no problem. I know
yeah, yeah,
here we
yeah.
are on NYU Zoom. I had to mention that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, we want to talk about some of these threats that are out here. I named a couple of them, but you're in the financial industry, big target. What would you say? What are some of the biggest threats you're seeing today?
I think it's a great question, and I like starting conversations like this around the threat because there's so many different kind of dependencies around it. Before I get into some of the threats, the specific threats that are out there, it may make sense to talk about the various threat actors.
Okay.
Uh, in speaking about threat actors, there's a couple of different categories or buckets of these threat actors. So the first that I would think about would be hacktivists. So those individuals who are fighting for a cause, think anonymous, lolsec.
Mhm.
There could be organized groups within a particular nation that are fighting for a cause. Also within that category would be like script kiddies or the novice user who's just trying to maybe hone their skills. And I bring that up because if you're on the defensive side, you don't know who's behind the keyboard on the other end. And so you don't know if they're just trying to hone their skills, so doing general network reconnaissance, or if they are actually trying to take you down. So they generate a lot of traffic, and it's hard to, like I said, decipher what their intent is. We don't know who's behind that keyboard. So that's the first group. The second would be the insider. And so, I bring up insiders from, the defensive standpoint as well. Think about if you're a cybersecurity professional within your company, the insider is something you need to account for, both malicious as well as the accidental user. You have to consider that from a data loss prevention standpoint. It highlights and stresses access management, business continuity activities. After all, this information within your organization is something you need to protect.
Right.
Trade secrets, your crown jewels, processing money, ensuring the integrity of account balances, whatever it might be. You have to keep that information within the confines of your network. So the insider would be, bucket number two. Three would be criminal groups. So
Uh-huh.
criminal groups are the folks that you tend to hear about. You see the flashy news articles. These criminal groups are primarily motivated by money.
Yes.
So they are designing their their campaigns around generating money. And we'll talk about ransomware. We'll talk about some of these other campaigns that they've released as well. They are making a lot of money. They're well financed. People are paying a lot of money to these groups. And the last group would be nation states. So I bring up nation states. They are well financed. They have unlimited capabilities, extremely sophisticated. And if they want to go after you and take you down, chances are they will succeed.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up those kind of buckets, those threat actors, and then we can get into some specifics. Within financial services, where I sit, we see many different threats. We are a large sector. We're made up of some of the largest banks and financial institutions around the globe. The fact that we deal with money, we are a bank, it naturally makes us a target.
Right.
So there are threats that we're seeing in the financial services sector that have been around for a while, but it's the delivery or how customized the threat is that makes it a little bit more difficult to detect and then certainly prevent.
Wow.
So there are things that we've never seen before. I mean, certainly that's the difficult things to prevent and detect.
0 days.
Like 0 days. New phishing campaign certainly is a challenge. But what we're seeing too is there's a knowledge share amongst these criminal groups.
Wow.
They are empowering each other to be successful. They are sharing credentials via bulk credential dumps on the dark web. They are sharing lessons learned. They're even working together. So their model, their business model has changed. Ransomware as a service, phishing as a service. Essentially, you can pay these groups, and they will do the hacking for you, or give you the tools to launch an attack.
Wow.
So what that means is they're taking a highly sophisticated process that requires an immense amount of technical know-how, and it essentially makes it a point-and-click operation.
Yeah.
So it makes it very easy. Now, getting into some of the special threats, that's kind of or unique threats. That's a big lead up here, Robert. We're seeing obviously phishing, ransomware, business email compromise. On the phishing front, I think many of you are aware of what phishing is, what constitutes phishing email. But it certainly is the de jure attack technique that adversaries are using. It's the go-to.
Yeah.
Why build a bigger ladder when all you can do is send out many emails and knowing that folks are going to click? The industry-wide click rate, I think, was upwards of like 25%. Maybe that's dropped recently. So 25 employees out of 100, they're going to click. Just release some emails out in the wild there. Phishing is the entry point. So it's the launching pad. So from there, the adversary can do any number of things: general eavesdropping, network reconnaissance, stealing data, siphoning data off the network, or launching a payload.
Yeah, and just for completeness, if there's someone that might be in the audience, what is phishing?
Sending various messages out with the intent of manipulating human behavior. So trying to trick somebody to click on a link or an embedded, maybe macros embedded attachment that contains malware. And the latter piece, that attachment, that is, you may recall 10, 11 years ago, RSA, massive security company, experienced a breach. That was driven by phishing. So the end result was catastrophic for RSA, but the attribution piece was attributed to phishing, to a malware-laden Excel spreadsheet that was sent to a number of employees within RSA. So phishing is kind of, I mentioned that first because really there's a lot of dependencies from phishing that we can get into.
Well, email is the number one threat vector. I want everybody to walk away from this session realizing email is the number one threat vector, the path in for threat actors. Yeah. So yeah, that was an excellent definition of phishing. Yep, we're on the same page.
I think the other one to note would be ransomware, and many of us, just a recent memory last summer with Colonial Pipeline, and there's food and meat with JBS, but ransomware. if you don't know what that is, essentially it's malware that goes after maybe portions of your network or your email infrastructure. Could be one computer, but essentially it locks down an environment. It could be your storage environment, so you can't access your data. It encrypts this data and you can't access it. And so the deal with ransomware is these criminal groups would give you an alert that says, hey, your data's been held for hostage. It's encrypted. In order to get access to it, pay us X amount of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and we'll give you the decryption key.
Right.
Lucrative model, been in place now for maybe just under 15 years. It's morphed along the way, but if you haven't thought about how ransomware would impact you personally, so your personal computer you might be using, or your company, you should certainly have those discussions with yourself or your team there within your company. Think about preparation. Think about the backups that need to be in place. Think about updating your software, your OS, training your staff. Training is critical through like phishing awareness, as Robert you mentioned. Just with email and that's the kind of the main threat vector. But just having the knowledge, having the discussion about what it is, what to be on the lookout for is critical. I used to work, as you heard, with Department of Homeland Security. The federal government's stance is when it comes to pay a ransom or not to pay a ransom, is do not pay the ransom. Reason being is you don't know if you're going to get the decryption key back. And then the second reason is you're financing a criminal enterprise, basically. So you're empowering them to do this again. There's been some evolution with ransomware, into like the cyber extortion space. Typically, ransomware has started off or did start off with just, like I said, encrypting portions of your network and saying, hey, you need to pay the ransom. Now what we've seen is data being siphoned, and your network being encrypted. And so the alert message will say, hey, we took data, and we locked down your environment. If you want your data to be unencrypted, give us money. And oh, by the way, you also need to pay us, or we're going to release the data that we took. So that's the cyber extortion element to that. So again, they're morphing their business model, and they're very good at it. Maybe the last one to note here, Robert, is business email compromise. And I know you and I had some discussions on this. Just to give folks a sense of how big this problem is, this campaign is. This is a $43 billion campaign in a 4 or 5 year time. So that's according to the FBI. So if you think about business email compromise, happening to small, medium, large organizations, essentially it's an account, basically a CEO, CFO's account within the organization may be compromised. And then from that account, instructions are sent to another employee saying, hey, please remit payment to this account number and do so immediately. And so sure enough, folks are sending wires to primarily offshore accounts, and they're losing, multi-million dollars, in one fell swoop there. So, it's business email compromise is a big deal. And Robert, I know you've done a lot of consulting. Are you seeing that with some of the folks that you're working with?
Yeah, as you mentioned, that number is about $46 billion in a short time frame, in a couple of years. What I would encourage people to do is the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, and it's ICC Crime Complaint Center 3, I think .gov. If you get your hands on that 2021 report, you see that the losses, financial losses from all internet crimes, business email compromise is at the top of that. Now, what tends to happen to companies, I won't delineate based on size, the threat actor comes in, hits them on Friday afternoon. They're looking to get that money out to the financial institutions so that it can be extracted from the institutions. And they're looking to be able to use the weekend for time. So what companies should do, they're cyber pros, you need a contact at the FBI Center. So I'm also a New York Cyber Fraud Task Force member, and that ties in the FBI and DHS. These guys will give you their cell number because you're going to get hit on a Friday afternoon. If you don't have a way to contact them. And they're pretty good at getting the money back because they now have international agreements in place that enable them to pull money. It's out there, but companies just they don't know. And Mike, I'll add to it that advances in cyber threats, like deepfake videos, are beginning to have an impact, right? I mean, we're on video right now. Well, do you really know that this is me sitting here, or is this a recording? Is that you, Mike, there sitting there? Did you just say that live, or did you record it? And
we're using the deepfake to make a phone call to somebody.
Yeah, the deepfake comes in. I'm the executive. Hi, I'm Robert Jones. We have this urgent request that just came in. I know you work at such and such a level, and you're in the company. What I need you to do is wire this money to Mike. It looked real. It looked real. Yeah. Yeah. So we didn't touch on.
Looks like Robert's having some technical difficulties here.
Oh, let's see. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Yeah, some of the technology that we find is novel and innovative is actually being used against us. You said that earlier. I mean, this is now down at a point and click level, man. You just turn over some money and then use the tools and make money. Yeah.
Yep.
So with that, you want to add anything more to that?
I think that covers it. Like I said, those kind of main key themes there with threat being phishing, being ransomware, business email compromise. We at the bank, we've deployed countless preventative detection controls in place, overlapping controls. We're testing them. We're ensuring that our assets are patched, up to date. So I would encourage you to do the same on the phishing front. Train your workforce. Send out phishing exercises frequently. Measure behavior. So measure those folks who report phishing exercises. They spot phishing, but then also acknowledge negative behavior. And so those folks who constantly are clicking on phishing exercises, they need to be better trained. Maybe bring their manager into the discussion. But you want to drive down the click rate, and by exercises is the way to do that.
Fantastic. I think I'm back now. Apologies for this unstable internet connection. It is, I'm not exactly sure what it's bringing it about. I mean, I'm actually on a separate network all by myself. So
no problem.
Yeah. So we talked about the financial industry. Let's see. How do they collaborate to understand what the threats are, mitigate threats, and be more effective themselves?
Sure.
The financial industry.
So I think we've all heard the adage that there are two types of organizations out there. One that has been breached and the other has been breached. They just don't know about it yet.
Right.
And so, I bring that up because if you're in this game together, if you're in this game by yourself, it's just you're signing up for failure. So you have to have collaboration in place. You have to have a system in place for sharing information. You have to work with other entities that are in this game together. And so the financial services industry collaborates as part of the Financial Services ISAC, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. The FSISAC has been in place since 1999.
Right.
The financial services sector is probably the most mature when it comes to collaboration. We have active banks, active members. This organization is a pay to play. It's a subscription-based model.
Very good.
Where we pay and we also get the benefit of the membership. And so we share maybe indicators of compromise, maybe IP addresses that don't have a good warm and fuzzy feeling. Phishing campaigns. We as a member are providing this information into that consortium, and so are all of the other members. This central body, the FSISAC, will triage that information, assess it, and then blast out indicators and reports to the membership. And so that helps us all be more secure and keep.
Is there any risk? Any risk in you sharing your information? I mean, any sort of risk that the government help to mitigate risk? If I'm a company and I'm a breach, then I come in and say, hey, ISAC folks, this is what happened to me. Anything you could share there?
So there is data protection agreements in place. If you think, for the federal government space, the top secret, the classification levels, there is one that's driven by DHS that TLP levels, Amber and such. So we can have more sensitive conversations under the auspice of the TLP levels.
Yeah.
That allows us to share information that's timely, that truly was impactful. Maybe we missed something, maybe we did catch something, we want others to be aware. But at the end of the day, we are competitors in the marketplace, but we are in this game together. We are cyber defenders, cyber professionals. It's not fair that folks want to take us down and steal money. We have to be in this together.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, hey, here's JP Morgan or, any other top 5 banks. And like you said, you're competing for market share. But at the end of the day, if there's a novel threat, right, a novel vulnerability that's exploited, it just takes down all 5, right? I mean, unless somebody says, hey, I had it and this is what we did, or more importantly, we didn't quite figure it all out. You need to know. So yeah, that's very important. And I think those ISACs stretch across practically there's an aviation ISAC. They have a cyber rodeo. Yeah, they have a cyber rodeo, and DHS, DOD, and FAA. And what they do is, it's in the electronics in the aircraft, the nav systems, radar, weather, other air traffic management systems. They do it all. I have something I want to just quickly show. We talked about aviation. You see these words here. It's Air Traffic Control Magazine. Adaptive risk-based, conflict detection for flight operations. If something like this is disrupted, look out, man. I mean, and I also talked about urban air mobility, right? So these are coming, and this is from summer of 2022. You're likely to see skies that look somewhat like this. These little aircraft that transport people around. That fits in with smart cities. Smart cities happens to be a center of excellence at Tandon as well. So this aviation, for anybody listening, aviation is presenting huge opportunities for career growth, as well as just the novelty of what it is. I mean, you're talking about the Jetsons, right? Bringing the Jetsons like living to life. It's coming. It's coming. Yeah. So we're at 12:44. I'm gonna try to get another question or so. And just one, there's any that you wanted to ask me, or you want me to go?
What about boards of directors? So we're hearing more and more. There's many more articles just on the interaction between security, so like CISO and the board, and just talk about kind of the responsibilities of maybe each there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, policy is the most important element of cybersecurity for a company. Policy. If you join a company as a cyber professional, maybe even in an interview process, ask to see the policy. May I have a glimpse at your cyber policy? Maybe they don't show you all of it, but hope that they have one. If they don't, well, you can take a good guess that there's probably some other things they haven't done, and you can look at that as, hey, I can come in and help them to get this all straightened out. Ultimately, you want that policy driven from the board. The CEO or the CISO, definitely not the CISO. You don't want it driven from the CISO. He's going to execute what has been presented. Ideally, if you can't get the board, the CEO, the chief executive officer, is the most important person at the company. But ideally, you want your board on board with cyber policy. Now, to that end, the Securities and Exchange Commission in July you're aware of a breach, you have 4 days to report. They put a time bound, a time bound on it, and you have to report. And awareness, as you said, with the ISACs, awareness is a good portion of your ability to mitigate the threat. And so boards and executives are being increasingly held to increasingly greater responsibility for cybersecurity. In addition to what the SEC did with the reporting, they're now asking about the board structure. Is cybersecurity handled in the committee, or is it handled by the board in total? Who on the board is cyber aware? How much? Right? What awareness do they have? For those listening if you've got some sort of senior thinking in you, right, you likely might get tapped to be an advisor to a board of directors because of your cyber expertise, right? I mean, they need to know because they're being held accountable, and they're being held accountable by the SEC and, more importantly, by their investors, right? It isn't just a government agency. The folks that put the money in that you're now using are saying, "Hey, tell me how strong or tight you are as it comes to cybersecurity." I have a book. I'm going to try this. I have in the chat. Let's see, Alexander, are you still there?
I think it is in the chat.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can put in the chat and send it to everyone.
Yeah, what Alexander is going to present in the chat is a link to some material that I would strongly suggest you take a look at. It's 53 megabytes in size, so we're not able to send it around. And ultimately, what I'd prefer you to do is to go to the National Association of Corporate Directors and the Internet Alliance there and tell them, "Hey, we came upon this information in a presentation delivered by NYU Tandon, and we'd like the most recent or most current information." I mean, it's 2020, they may or may not have picked up one, but in that booklet, there's some very, very, very useful stuff. You don't have to guess about, "Hey man, what do I do to inform my board?" I've never done that before. Inside that material, you have a number of tools in addition to content, but a number of tools. One of them is 10 questions for boards, right? Questions that you would ask a board. One of them: what feedback has the management team and or investor relations received from our major investors? What questions are investors asking about how the company approaches information security and data privacy? Board members might not know that. I mean, they're not people who study cybersecurity, they study governance. And so if you look at that link and you look at the material, you're going to find that there are a host of useful tools in it. There's a scorecard. People are always about metrics. They can help you to understand the kinds of metrics that you want to use in your organization to help you get a good understanding about what's happening in the environment. And then they're at a board level. So, it's one thing to talk about, the size of your, maybe some of your SIEM records or something that is more of a practitioner's like type of information. But a board has to see information at a little higher level. And when they do, they're processing it. They're great at governance. They're not so great. They're getting better at cybersecurity. So boards are now, and senior executives are now being held to a greater level of accountability, and the SEC is driving that. And we now know, right? We talked about critical infrastructure. We're now going to be going into aviation. So this is for every organization of every size and every industry. Yeah. We have we've got about 10 minutes. I'm seeing about 12:50. And I mean, we may be able to put another question in there, but I mean, we're going to want the audience, if there's someone in the audience that has a question, you're welcome to kind of chime in now so we can give you some of our insight on that question, on the question you may have.
Yeah, get some questions.
Okay, I don't think I see. As we would say at a board meeting, hearing none. So, Mike, I'll say this one with you, and because we're rounding out our.
Should we open it up? Are there anyone have any questions for Robert?
Yeah, we'd like anyone that has a question. Alexander, what do you want it in the chat?
No, they can unmute themselves and just ask the question
Feel free
directly.
to unmute. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question of any kind.
We need a question.
Somebody out there, give us a question. A tough one, or whatever the question is, give it to us. Okay, Mike. Well, hearing none, we're going to try to touch on this last bit. So sooner or later, an organization gets breached. You mentioned it earlier. It's not a matter of if, but when, and most have been breached and just don't know it. In fact, I think you have about 180 to 200 days before you're even aware that something is going wrong in your environment. So what I want to ask you is, what do you do and how do you respond when that breach, when you've been breached?
We kind of touched on this earlier. Preparation is certainly key. Having resources, having controls in place to identify that you indeed have been breached, and reducing the time between identification and kind of triaging that incident is critical.
Right.
And containing that incident. So having a plan in place, a playbook in place, Robert, I think you made a great point earlier about having a plan that's been approved from the senior folks within the organization. It's not just one person taking a plan and running with it. Well, it's a plan that's been approved, it's been blessed. When there's a chaos, everybody tends to run around with their hair on fire. So this adds structure to chaos.
Yeah.
So having that plan in place is critical. Within US Bank, and I know it's common within industry, we have tabletop exercises on predefined events. Okay, so what are we doing if a critical database is encrypted? What are we doing if we've got malware that's slowly propagating on the network? We've got these predefined incidents or events that have been defined, and we are thinking about those. We're bringing in the right folks to the table. We have outside firms on retainer. We have, as you mentioned, law enforcement on speed dial. We are doing all the things we can up front to prepare for a bad day. That will make that bad day maybe a little bit more tolerable, at least figuring out, digesting what the true scope of the incident is. But yeah, I think that's the preparation is key. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I want to add something here, right? So imagine you have these comprehensive plans, and you have your contact list and your call tree and who's going to call what. And imagine that you have that information on a server, and the server now has been hit with ransomware. So now you don't even have access to your plan unless you have copied or printed out a physical copy of your plan. And people have it. At a minimum, the call trees need to be physical, and people need to have them. I mean, there are some very practical things about an incident response plan that everyone should be aware of, and that's probably the key, man. You go and you develop it. You go and you do your exercises, your lessons learned. You capture all of that in documents. Make sure that you have those documents offline, physically printed out, that you can work from. Because as you mentioned, when the event happens, and it just starts, you're finding out, well, no, it's not just here, it's here. Oh, and it's over there, and it's over there. Oh, what are we going to do? And now the couple of people who are around you, I mean, do you work with? You say, oh, I got to call legal. Oh, I got to call public relations. Oh, I got to call. Do you have the numbers? Oh, no, they're in the plan. So you have to make sure that information is accessible. And just offline. I mean, and somebody has to have it, right? If you don't have it in the hands of everybody, it needs to be in the hands of at least one person, and ideally several people, so that if any person is on vacation or whatever that may be, that you can get this information. And you may even want to have some copies off site, because there could be things that prevent you from getting into the facility where you are for whatever that reason is. You may have a electronic security system for your doors, and that's impacted, right? We've had hotels that have been impacted with cyber breaches, and they have been unable to use the card readers, the electronic card readers, to get into rooms. I mean, so the fact that technology is so pervasive, it means that any and everywhere, you could have some unintended or undesirable experience occur, and it's a result of a cybersecurity exposure. We're up on about 12:56. That leaves us with about, if I do the math right, that's 4 minutes to take us to one. Mike, I mean, anything you want to talk about. I mean, we don't have to sort of go down the list, but of what we wanted to cover in terms of the questions. But anything you want to talk about, supply chain risk management. I mean, that's a buzz in the industry. You got IoT and ICS. I mean, we can go on for probably another half an hour.
That's true. Knowing that we have permanent and prospective students on the line here, maybe just some words of wisdom if that matters. I think you'll build. So continue on. If you're in a rough patch with school and balancing school with work, and just there's light at the end of the tunnel there. You'll cross the finish line. You'll be rewarded for it. So head down and keep up the good work. Professionally, build a network. Always sign up for activities. Always look internally within your company if there's opportunities to kind of go the extra mile. Volunteer for things. Do briefings. Extracurricular stuff really does matter. So I wanted to bring that up. Robert, do you have any advice for?
I think you touched on it. I mean, because this is actually something that's human, right? I mean, we talk about it's people, process, technology, but process and technology don't work without people. And so if you had just a person, I mean, I'm sure Mike, you and I, if we found ourselves in the trench, I mean, we could get out of it. But if you're in there alone, or I mean, you just don't have, people, you got bigger problems because technology, and it's just sort of complex. But I want to say that NYU Tandon offers the kind of program that could help any cyber professional and people without cyber backgrounds. We have a bridge program that could get you from whatever that degree is into cybersecurity to help us address this talent shortage. And I want you to really think about that. And Mike, I want to leave you with this. We're at 12:58. If there's ever anybody I want to do a panel with or a discussion with, a conversation, you're at the top of the list. I mean, this is easy.
Thank you. And right back at you.
Yeah, this is easy.
It's a natural conversation. I appreciated this. If there are any alumni, I know we said current students or prospective students, but any alumni out there that is looking to give back to NYU as well, I think there's a wealth of opportunities that are out there. Please reach out to Alexandra. You'd be a good person to help shepherd that. So alumni, I know there's opportunities.
Yeah, come to events like these. Alexandra, we got about a minute left. We're going to turn it over to you to talk about what comes next.
Well, thank you both. This is a great conversation. And we thank all of our alumni for participating this afternoon and hope you will join us for the final Cyber Talk on October 4th, featuring industry speaker David Moon, CEO of ARC's Nimbus. David will discuss the overall issues associated with cybersecurity risk and will present new data-driven technology. This concludes the Cybersecurity Talk, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.
Goodbye.